94 degrees in the winter and 70, 78.
Yeah, exactly. I can't wait to go home and see my trusty fan.
So what?
My trusty fan.
Oh, right.
Can I talk to you later?
I do. I'll come on the other side. My purse is in the back.
It's Tuesday, September 9, 2008 at 7:10. I'm Dan Caruso, Chairman of the Connecticut Siting Council. Other members of the Council with us here this evening are Brian Golembuski, Designee for Commissioner Gina McCarthy of the Department of Environmental Protection. We have Gerald J. Heffernan, Designee for Commissioner Donald Downs of the Department of Public Utility Control. Philip T. Ashton, Daniel P. Lynch Jr., James J. Murphy Jr., and Edward S. Walensky. Members of the staff with us here this evening are S. Derek Phelps, our Executive Director, David Martin, our Siting Analyst, Assistant Attorney General Robert L. Marconi, the Court Reporter Gail Gregoriadis, and our Audio Technician Joseph Reese. This hearing is held pursuant to the provisions of Title 16 of the Connecticut General Statutes and of the Uniform Administrative Procedures Act. Upon an application from OptiSite Towers, Inc. and Omnipoint Communications, Inc. for a Certificate of Environmental Compatibility and Public Need for the construction, maintenance, and operation of a telecommunications facility to be located at 52 Stadley Rough Road, Danbury. This application was received by the Council on June 30th, 2008. It's a reminder to all, ex parte, that is off-the-record communication with a member of the Council or a member of the Council staff upon the merits of this application is prohibited by law. In 1996, the Congress of the United States recognized the nationwide need for high-quality wireless telecommunication services, including cellular telephone service. Through the Federal Telecommunications Act of 1996, Congress expressed its desire to promote competition, to encourage technical innovations, and to foster lower prices for telecommunications services. In issuing cellular licenses, the federal government has preempted the determination of a public need for cellular service by the states, although not the need for any particular site. And it established design standards so as to ensure technical integrity and nationwide compatibility between and amongst all systems. I wish to note further specific ways in which the Federal Telecommunications Act of 1996 restricts this Council's actions. This Act prohibits any state or local government or agency thereof, including this Council, from regulating telecommunications towers on the basis of the environmental effects of radio frequency emissions, to the extent that such towers and their equipment comply with the FCC's regulations concerning such emissions. Also, this act blocks state and local government and agency thereof, such as this council, from prohibiting personal wireless service for any town or for any area. Finally, this act prohibits local and state entities, including this council, from discriminating between and amongst providers of functionally equivalent services. Simply put, even if one company provides coverage for an area, other companies have a right to compete and to offer their services therein. Amongst the important decisions that this council has to make are weighing whether the applicant has met its burden of proving that there's a coverage problem, which problem cannot be solved by tower sharing or by utilizing some other existing facility. Additionally, the council needs to examine the applicant's proposal, including its form and height, to determine if the proposal will solve the problem. Moreover, we must examine whether better alternative sites exist, including better available alternative sites. Parties and interveners to the proceedings are as follows. We have the applicant, OptiSite Towers LLC, and OmniPoint Communications Inc., through the attorneys Christopher D. Fisher and Lucia Chiocchio, both of the law firm of Cuddy and Fetter, and we have party, the City of Danbury, through their attorney or deputy corporation counsels, Les Pinter and Robin Edwards. This evening's hearing session has been reserved first for the public to make short statements into the record. These public statements are not subject to cross-examination, and by making those statements, the same time does not entitle the person making those statements to cross-examine any other person. These statements will become part of the record for council consideration. There's a sign-up sheet in the back for those who have not signed up and who would still like to participate. I also wish to note for those who participate at this time and those who choose not to, that you may send written statements to the council within 30 days of the close of this hearing, and those written statements will be given the same weight as those spoken here this evening. We ask each person who wishes to make a statement in this proceeding to confine his or herself to the subject matter before the council and to avoid repetition so that this hearing can be carried out to its conclusion without unreasonable or unnecessary delays. A verbatim transcript of this hearing will be made and deposited with the town clerk's office for Danbury for the convenience of the public. This time I'd ask those with cell phones to turn them off or to put them on silent. Before we begin, I would remind everyone that the council began deliberations at 3 o'clock, following a meeting and an examination of the premises which are under consideration. At the 3 o'clock hearing, we did hear some testimony that will be continued to a later date. For the benefit of all here, I would ask that the applicant is ready to give us a brief description of what is being proposed so that everybody who has come to this public hearing will be on the same page. Mr. Baskin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be brief. Pardon my back, council. I know this is very small and there's a lot of people in the room, you won't be able to see this, but I'll just briefly describe the proposed facility. As the chairman mentioned, the site is at 52 Stadley Rough Road. The facility will be accessed from the south side of the property. The building in purple is the church. We'll be accessing along the existing asphalt driveway. which comes around behind the church. It's about 460 feet. And then we will leave the existing asphalt to a proposed gravel access road about 10 foot wide that would go to the east and then turn south into a compound. Power and telephone will be underground along the access roadway, providing power and telephone to the compound. The compound is 50 foot wide by 90 foot long, and it's a gravel area surrounded by a security fence, 8 foot high security chain link fence with a locked gate. The tower itself we're proposed is a monopole tower, 140 foot tall. A monopole means it's one single tower, it doesn't have any guy wires. The antennas we're proposing will be flush mounted to the tower. That means they'll be mounted very closely to that monopole. We are proposing to plant landscaping trees along the eastern edge of the compound and along the southern edge to provide some screening of the compound. And the installation will require the removal of 9 trees that are 6 inches in diameter or bigger. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bascom, on behalf of the applicant for giving us that brief presentation. I note that the presence of the mayor, where'd he go? Mr. Boughton, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Boughton, I know you have a few words to say.
Yes, sir.
Welcome.
Thank you. And welcome to you as well, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate the Siting Council taking time today. We know it's been a long day starting at 3 o'clock. We know we've continued the technical portion of this hearing till October, but we certainly appreciate you being here to listen to all the neighbors that we see behind us here tonight. And you probably should note that this really is about neighbors and it's about neighborhoods. And the primary deficiency with this application is that this monopole, this 140-foot high piece of equipment, is being located in a neighborhood that is not a commercial district. It is not an industrial zone. It is a neighborhood. In fact, it's one of the most pristine neighborhoods we have in the city of Danbury. So,
I'd like to point out that every time there's more applause, that it will take away the time we have available for everyone, which means that we might have to adjourn and reconvene in New Britain at a later time. So that's for the
understood, Mr. Chairman.
That's not for you, Mr. Mayor, because I expect
I was
people to
clapping
applaud
darn hard
for
there.
you.
I want you to know.
We expect people to applaud for you, and we want that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure the folks understand that, and we certainly recognize that we want to get everybody in tonight. And let me just say that there is a natural scenic beauty that's referred to in our Connecticut general statutes relating to the siting of this kind of equipment. And we want to preserve the natural scenic beauty of this neighborhood. And by locating this pole in its location, you will disturb this beauty, this natural beauty, forever. You can't take it back once it's in place. The second concern that we have is that this really is a reflection of OptiSite not doing its homework. There are other locations to locate this particular equipment within the area. They haven't done their homework in terms of presenting those options to you, and that's of concern to us. They went for what we call the low-hanging fruit. It was an easy spot to pick. They didn't really care about the neighborhood. Let's put it here. Let's not go and do any due diligence. And certainly, we think that they ought to go out and do their due diligence and come back with alternate locations that we believe are available to them. Let me just say, we don't believe it's the city's responsibility to go find an alternate location for them. We're not in the business of siting cell towers. That's what they have their engineers, and that's what they get paid to do. So for us to use city resources to do that for them seems to me a little bit strange. But having said that, we certainly would be willing to consult with them to try to find the most optimum place to locate this for both the neighborhoods and for the city. But as it stands now, located at 52 Stadley Rough Road, clearly this is not something that we support. We're very concerned about this. We're concerned about the impact of property values. We have an entire presentation lined up by neighbors that are going to present that, and I want to congratulate them for putting this all together on their own and doing all of their homework and research to show what the negative impact will be. But the net of all this is that there are alternate locations. We ask that OptiSite go back to the drawing board, find those. We certainly, again, would kibitz with them to be able to help them locate this properly and not locate it in this particular location because we don't want to disrupt the beauty and the natural scenery of this area. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and we do appreciate the hard work which shows on behalf of the citizens of your community. We also have a Joe Cabo. Is that, am I correct pronouncing it?
Thank you.
Mr. Cabo, would you just tell me your position with the, in the government here?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I will. I am the president of the Common Council here in the city of Danbury. It's a 21-member legislative body of the city of Danbury, in which I am the president. I also am one of the elected third ward representatives of the city of Danbury, which is the ward in which they're trying to locate the proposed monopole.
And you sent us a letter also, right?
I did not. I sent in
somebody else on your
conjunction with
council
the city,
did?
yes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Mr. Phelps, thank you also for the privilege of being able to be here and speak to you tonight. The mayor had actually spoke about the pristine condition of this neighborhood and this ward, and I'm not to slight any of my fellow council members, but I do believe, as well as Mr. Calandrino, is the third ward is probably one of the nicest wards in the city of Danbury. Location of the lake and the properties here are just spectacular, and we'd like to keep it that way. I long believe, it's long been my belief that cell towers do not belong in residential neighborhoods. Let's be honest, cell towers give residential neighborhoods an industrial look and feel. That is not what we want or need here, not for our quality of life, not for our property values, not so big business can line their pockets with the profits at the expense of residents, not in a residential neighborhood. While I was with you all today at the balloon test, standing in the back driveway of the church, I had 3 bars of service strength, and I am a T-Mobile customer. 3 out of 5 bars is not bad service in a location where they're claiming that they need to have better coverage. Within a sea of paperwork that you received from the city of Danbury, you'll find a driving test that was included with the packet that came from the city. And the test will show you calls made from a T-Mobile cell phone, which was my T-Mobile cell phone, from different areas all around the peninsula of the Great Plains Stadley Rough area. And you'll see from the results of that test that communication was good at all points during that test. I recently signed into the T-Mobile website, and I would encourage you also to do the same thing. There's a link on the site that you can go and look at their coverage and their service area and what coverage they claim is provided by them in the areas throughout the United States. If you go to the website, you'll see that in most places in the Great Plains Stadley Rough area, that there's at least 3 to 4 bars of coverage in most areas. There's one area that has, I believe, 2 bars of service, and that is a large wood track that's undeveloped and hopefully will remain undeveloped in this area that does not have very good coverage, but there's no homes there, there's no residents, there's no trails, there's nothing there that would need cell phone use. In closing, I'd just like to say that 3 out of 5 bars is good, average, adequate. In my mind, I believe cell phone companies should be entitled to provide good service, but not perfect coverage. And I think that's what T-Mobile and OptiSite is trying to do here. I do not believe that cell towers belong in residential neighborhoods. T-Mobile and other cell phone companies should be exploring alternate sites and ways to improve technologies so as not to degrade residential areas by saturating them with cell phones and unsightly towers. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Cabo. Could you just do me one, you introduced another, there's somebody else from the town council here?
Actually, there are several members from the town council.
Okay, and because you mentioned somebody's name and I couldn't quite hear it, and if you just like,
Okay, well,
maybe you could just introduce them and they could stand up and...
That would be great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With us tonight, I have my ward mate, which is the other representative from the 3rd Ward, Mr. Mike Calandrino. I have Mr. Phil Curran, who's a councilman at large here in the city of Danbury, Mr. Greg Seabury, who is the majority leader of the Common Council here in the city of Danbury. I have Mr. Robert Arconti, Mr. Warren Levy, and I believe that's it for the members of the council, unless they're sitting back here somewhere else.
It looks like you have a quorum, though.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming. It's my understanding that, as I tried to indicate earlier, that we come to communities, we come to listen. That's why we're here. We come to try and listen to everybody. And, you know, when a meeting has many people, all in the same, wanting to talk, I want to be able to listen to everybody. We only have a limited amount of time, so that's why we're going to try and, you know, if you could, you know, keep your comments as brief as possible and try not to repeat someone else, that we can try and listen to everybody who wants to speak here. So that's hopefully what we can do. Now, I believe that, as the mayor indicated, that there are 7 people who are coming up as a group. Is that it?
Yes.
And it would be, and I'm going to try not to mispronounce everyone's name, but I will, Mike Iakova, everybody knows who the first 7 are, right? So why don't they just come on up and you can introduce yourself, right? But it looks like there are only 2 of you, or there's just 1 of you. You're just coming up individually?
Yes.
Okay, all right, very good.
Good evening. The name's Mike Iacovacci.
It was pretty close, huh? And would you mind spelling that then for our recorder?
Well, first I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the rest of the council for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight about this cell tower. As the mayor mentioned, I'm one of several neighbors who, after reviewing the proposal that was submitted on June 30th of this year, felt we needed to organize to oppose what we believe is an unneeded and an unsightly tower located at 52 Stadley Rough Road. Myself and 4 other neighbors, Armin Stouffer, Carol Rizza, and Ruth and Charles Snodgrass, decided to form what we call our core group. And the focus of our group really was to kind of consolidate the thoughts of the neighborhood so that we could present this to you tonight, really. So during the last several months, we've spent considerable time and money both reviewing the OptiSite application and compiling a list of concerns. It's my understanding that you, as the Connecticut Siting Council, are the sole decision makers on this application put forth by OptiSite and the co-applicant T-Mobile. It's also my understanding that the CSC's sole responsibility in rendering their decision is to weigh the public need of the tower versus the adverse effects it may have within the neighborhood. So by this time, you've had an opportunity to review the submitted application, and I'm curious to know if you were left with the same feeling as I was upon reviewing it. By that I mean, I felt as if OptiSite was rushing to submit the application. I also feel that this is evident in the large amount of documentation that was reused from the 2006 proposal to the city of Danbury. And there was a number of discrepancies between, even amongst their own work within the document. It appears T-Mobile's based their need for the tower solely on computer simulations to highlight these coverage gaps. If you look on page 1 of your handout, you'll see what I refer to as our net new coverage map for T-Mobile. I created this map by taking the existing T-Mobile coverage map and the new T-Mobile coverage map from the application and highlighted only the areas that supposedly have no service today but would gain service should the tower be constructed. I hope it strikes you as it struck me that a tower which sits at 140 feet high and 75 feet above the tree canopy would provide so little new coverage to the area. Our core group also believes that these computer simulations do not reflect real coverage issues for T-Mobile in the area. In fact, the city of Danbury conducted a series of tests. They used a T-Mobile phone to make calls from the supposed no coverage zone, and those results were submitted by the city. I think you'll agree that there's a contradiction between what T-Mobile claims is a gap in coverage in the area and the results of a real drive test. Our core group also conducted a similar test, but this time we used Sprint Nextel, which is also mentioned in the application, as well as Verizon. We did this in the same area, and for all these carriers, we found the service was indeed available. The results of those tests are on pages 2 and 3 of the document you have before you. So again, our group feels strongly that OptiSite and T-Mobile have failed to demonstrate that a real service coverage gap exists in this area that they designated. Further, we're not even certain that constructing this tower would serve to fix the alleged gap. Another portion of the application that I found extremely concerning as I reviewed it back in June is the visual assessment done by VHB. The VHB methodology was to fly a weather balloon from the proposed tower location and then take photographs to determine which areas the tower would be visible from should it be constructed. Again, I find some curious discrepancies in the assessment. First, VHB never specifies in the application the GPS coordinates from which the balloon was flown from. 52 Stadley Rough Road is a property several acres in size. Are we to assume that that VHB used the coordinates that were indicated on the June 30th application? Or did they simply get close enough by flying the balloon from the rear driveway of the church? Either way, the coordinates in the application were out of date. They were left in from a 2006 plan, and I understand that they've resubmitted updated coordinates recently within the last week. It's also no surprise that the VHB study was conducted under the most ideal conditions for the applicant. It occurred in the summer when all the trees are in full bloom. We all know there's a stark difference between July and January as it relates to the visibility of the tower. The most curious of all the discrepancies in the VHB study to me are views 6 and 7 within their study within the application. View 6 is a photo from Indian Spring Road, and view 7 is a photo from my road, Corntassel Road. VHB claims that the tower will not be visible from these two locations. Our core group found this claim so alarming that we decided to conduct our own balloon test. On July 19th, I flew a 4-foot weather balloon 136 feet in the air, which when you add on the height of the balloon equals to the 140-foot proposed height. We flew the balloon from the exact location designated in the application, and we used a handheld GPS to guide us. We then proceeded to take photographs from the surrounding area. Again, we used the GPS coordinates to mark each location where we took a photograph.
One moment, please. Thank you.
On page 4, you'll find a Google map, which I plotted the tower location, that's the red marker, and then 21 photographed locations using the GPS coordinates. Even though our test was cut short due to bad weather, you'll notice the tower was visible from several locations on Indian Spring Road and Corntassel Road. On page 5, you will see a photo with a red arrow, which indicates where the tower would be. This picture was taken from the same location as view 6 of the VHB study. Note that in our test, the tower would indeed be visible, certainly in the wintertime. On page 6, you'll see a photo that clearly shows the balloon above the tree line. This photo was from the same location as view 7 from the VHB study. Again, why did VHB not see the balloon during their test, but we did? Pictures 7 and 8 should give you an idea of how close this tower will be to the residents at 14 Indian Spring Road. To me, there's no question that the home value at 14 Indian Spring Road will decrease, and that no amount of stealthing technology will hide this tower from potential buyers. Our full study was submitted by the City of Danbury as part of Docket 366, and I'd encourage you to review our findings before determining if the public need outweighs the visual impact to our community in this case. Thank you again for your time. I'd like to introduce Armin Stauffer, another member of our core group.
Before I start, I just want to say that we submitted on July 1st this year a petition of over 170 signatures from residents and parents that have children that go to Stadley Rough School. I have an acknowledgement. I have an acknowledgement from the Connecticut Siting Council. I did not see this posted on the website, and just want to make sure that this is going to be part of the public record. I have the originals here, and I don't know if you have copies of what we submitted.
Yes, we have those, but I don't think everybody wants their name and address up on the
Right,
website.
okay,
Right?
and that's what I thought was a privacy issue. Do you need the originals, or?
Mr. Phelps, if you wouldn't mind taking them. And
Mr. Chairman, I'll collect them. They'll be placed in the public comment file in the council's offices in New Britain, sir.
great, thanks.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Please proceed.
Okay, my name is Armin Stauffer. I live at 69 Stadley Rough Road, and I'm going to talk to you about the impact of the cell tower and how it does, the facility design does not conform to the zoning regulations that the City of Danbury has set forth. The City of Danbury has enacted planning and zoning regulations that accommodate the communication needs of residents and businesses by balancing the location of wireless telecommunication facilities against protecting the public health, safety, convenience, and property values. Based on the information that was supplied in the June 30th application, the GPS coordinates that we looked at, as a matter of practice, the city zoning requires that the height of the tower plus 25 feet would equal the fall zone. So in this case, it would be 165 feet. If you look at Exhibit B, and based on the coordinates that we understood to be part of the application, the tower plus the 25-foot allowance not only extends well over the property line, but also intrudes upon the existing home, which is number 14 Indian Spring, as well as the in-ground pool that's in the yard. Additionally, the radius extends into the back playground of the Church of the Christ playground. In addition to the safety concern, we want to know if OptiSite can prove that, based on the site plan submitted, there are adequate setbacks from the tower to protect against falling equipment and any debris. Also, can it be proved that there is no detrimental impact resulting in the routine maintenance of the tower or any damage caused by a lightning strike? You can see from Exhibit B that the tower at 140 feet is centered in the neighborhood and is not in harmony with the existing structures. Looking at Exhibit C, if approved, the 140-foot tower would be higher than the building height of Danbury Hospital without its towers. And this would be in a residential neighborhood where it's RA40 zoning. The maximum building height is 35 feet or 3 stories. And I'd just like to comment on this picture here, because this is what we had available to us and we took it off of the applicant's filing. That the church that's depicted in this picture is the Colonial Hills Baptist Church. It is not the church that the tower would be located. And over the past few years, the Colonial Hills Baptist Church has invested considerable time and money into beautifying the 10-acre parcel that they reside on into a park-like setting. And in doing so, their improvements have complemented the natural beauty of the Stadley Rough area. And the next thing I'd like to talk to you about is wetlands. This site is to be located 6 feet from wetlands, and the concerns that we have are what specific construction techniques would be employed to assure that the wetland soils are not going to be disturbed. Shouldn't there be a minimum buffer zone between the site and the wetlands? Wouldn't the wetlands water flow be disrupted by the construction of a concrete pad? My understanding the concrete pad is 50 by 90. After interviewing residents, and some of these residents have firsthand experience, many of the homes that are located on Indian Spring Road don't have basements. And the reason being is that the water table is very high in that area, and especially through the time period in November through May. And if you're digging down 4 to 5 feet, you hit water. And also, many of the homes that were built in this area were built in the 1960s and still have their original septic systems. And we want to make sure that those septic systems are not disturbed by construction. Lastly, I want to talk to you about ridgeline protection. And we have 2 exhibits. D, which is taken from the parking lot of St. Gregory's Church, and the picture that we used was right off the digitize application, and the tower can be seen from more than half a mile away. And you can see how it extends over the existing tree line. And the second exhibit we have is E, was taken when we flew our own balloon, and it's taken from the back playground from Stadley Rough School, and again, it's going to extend over the existing tree line. Ridgeline protection is typically instituted to preserve views and protect the aesthetic character of an area. There is no ideal definition of what is described as a ridgeline. Because of its high profile and wide visibility, the proposed cell tower can characterize an entire region. And let me just say to you, Newtown, Flagpole, the cross when you're on 84 in Waterbury, and now we're going to have the Stadley Rough cell tower. Ridgeline protection techniques that support the denial of the site for the construction of a cell tower are restriction on tree removal to create a view and landscaping requirements to minimize structure visibility, and a limitation on size, placement, height of vertical projections, maintaining continuity of natural features, none of which the proposed cell tower will employ. The tree canopy is mature, and future growth will not compensate for the additional 65 to 75 feet required so that the cell tower blends in. The cell tower cannot be stealthed in any form, whether it be monopole, flagpole, or fake tree. It cannot be camouflaged into the surroundings because of all the trees surrounding the location are deciduous trees, and there are no pine trees in the ridgeline. Now I'd like to turn this over to Carol Rizza, and she's going to...
I'm just going to point out again, I'd like to make sure we get everybody in. And I believe that the next person is Carol Rizza.
Correct.
And could you just tell me, when you get up there, just tell me where you live so we make sure we have that.
Good evening. My name is Carol Rizza. I live at 8 Indian Spring Road, and my property backs up or butts the church and the cell tower location. Per the City of Danbury's Planning and Zoning Regulations, Section 1, the purpose of the planning and zoning regulations are, I quote, enacted to protect the public health, safety, general welfare, excuse me, convenience, and property values. The construction of a cell tower would dramatically affect the value of surrounding residential properties. Based on professional findings by appraisers and local real estate agents, property values of homes within close proximity to high-tension wires, electrical towers, and cell towers are typically reduced by as much as 25% compared to the same home where there are none of these influencing factors. Though the effects of electromagnetic fields and radiation on humans and wildlife are still unknown, there's a perception that cell phone towers, high-tension wires, and electric towers cause cancer. As long as there's a perception, our property is going to be less marketable and valuable. I was able to find 25 case studies in a recent search of the worldwide ERC Unique Properties database. The worldwide ERC is a well-known organization by the relocation industry that has developed a database to assist appraisers and real estate agents throughout the United States with determining appropriate value price estimates for properties that have unique features. A unique feature can be either positive or negative, and a property may fall into this classification for a variety of reasons. It may range from off-site influences such as high-tension wires near to or on the subject site, or an adjacent landfill causing odors. It could be a functional problem such as a highly unusual layout. It could be a historical feature such as a home built by an important architect. Or it may be a physical problem such as a home that was involved in a fire that was professionally repaired but left buyers with lingering concerns about the health and structural integrity of the home. The data in this database concurs with the market study O'Neill, Duffy and Company, LLC, submitted to the Danbury Planning Commission on October 3rd, 2000. The proposed cell tower will not be consistent with and in harmony with the area neighborhood, and the installation of such a tower is expected to negatively affect the market values of surrounding properties and homes by as much as 15 to 25%. The details of these 25 case studies were submitted with the document that was prepared by myself, Armin Stauffer, and Mike Yakovacci, and submitted with the filing by the City of Danbury. I have asked two people to make statements this evening in support of my findings. Kirk Kleiss, a professional appraiser, and Peggy Nye, a realtor with William Ravis here in Danbury. I'd like to call up Kirk Kleiss to speak.
Actually, does that conclude your remarks?
That will conclude my remark. I do have a closing
Well,
statement.
why don't you give me that? Because I'm going to ask them to give their own talk. Okay?
All right, that's fine. I can
Thank
do
you.
that. We believe that OptiSite has not demonstrated that the public need outweighs any negative impacts as a result of the construction of the cell tower on this site. Now that you've seen the proposed location, you must know that an industrial-type utility will have an adverse environmental effect on this neighborhood. Because of its high profile and wide visibility, the proposed cell tower will create an immeasurable hardship, reduce our quality of life, decrease our real estate values, and negatively affect the natural beauty and vistas of the Stadley Rough Great Plain area. The Connecticut Siting Council must perform its statutory duty to conduct appropriate studies and to issue regulations to minimize the environmental impact of telecommunications facilities. The CSC's decision must be based on substantial evidence in the written record. We believe that the CSC can and should reject docket 366. The cell tower would substantially harm the area's scenic quality. Public safety concerns do not require that it be built on this site. Shared use of another existing tower is feasible. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. We appreciate that. It just helps to keep everybody's testimony together so we won't lose part of yours, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Carol. Kurt Kleiss?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening in the council. I'd like to point out to the council that I am a resident of Danbury, have been since 1978. I am speaking tonight not in my capacity as a certified general real estate appraiser necessarily in the state of Connecticut. I've been in practice evaluating residential real estate here in the greater Danbury area since 1981, but I'm also speaking as a private citizen. I'm not receiving any compensation from this group. My appearance here tonight is strictly in the public interest. I did submit to the council some correspondence dated August 15th, which I'm not going to be too redundant here. You can certainly reference it as part of your review. What I'd like to do this evening, however, is just emphasize to you that over the course of my practice, I've had the experience to observe properties either as comparable sales or as properties that I've been appraising that have been influenced by adverse external factors such as high-tension power lines, microwave towers, gas transmission lines, and they seem to fit in the same kind of category from the perception of the typical buyer as do cell towers. Now, there is no scientific evidence that there is any detrimental effect from electromagnetic fields, none that I've ever been able to find. However, in those cases where I've had to either evaluate comparable sales or subject properties that I have been appraising, and I've reached out and referenced studies that have been available, and these have been in the states of California, Texas. I've read some material from New Zealand and also the United Kingdom. There seems to be a consistency that there is a negative perception of the presence of these types of uses, and that they are totally incompatible, or are incompatible, I should say, with a residential area. And typically when I've looked at these types of materials, generally, and this relates to what Carol had spoken to, we see a range of value with regard to a discount factor somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 25%. There's a lot of factors that influence this. Proximity to the adverse influence is one. Additionally, market conditions tend to either amplify or diminish. You can imagine that in the formerly hot real estate markets that we experienced in the past, many times this did not have a strong influence because the driving force here was is something available, not whether or not it was proximate to an adverse influence. However, in our current market paradigm, where we see oversupplies, declining values, this sort of thing, it's going to have an amplified effect on property values. So I would just like to, essentially the studies, ironically, Carol referenced the Employee Relocation Council. And just last week, I received my September issue of Mobility Magazine, which is published by the Relocation Council. And ironically, in here, there is an article written by Charlie Flagg, who was an appraiser in Hudson, Ohio, called What's Up? And what's up in Hudson, Ohio is that he was asked by one of his clients to do an analysis of a property that wasn't selling, and to tell them why it was that in spite of repeated price reductions, this property wouldn't sell. He went out in this 130 home subdivision, and he found data which supported and clearly showed that in this particular case, proximities to high-tension power lines in this particular subdivision were documented to be 10%, which kind of, fits in with some of the other information that we have seen. He didn't stop there though, because what he noticed also was that with the current depressed market that they were experiencing in this area, that the competitive offerings, those properties that were still on the market, that were proximate to high-tension power lines, that those were priced approximately 20% below this historical data that he had seen, and that the market times were protracted. So I think it's been pretty well supported, even though, like I said, there's not a lot of hard data to go by in our particular case. I think it's been pretty much, like I said, widely accepted that the market does react to these sorts of things, and that properties that are proximate to these types of uses can suffer a decline in their property value. As I said, I did submit a letter to the council. Hopefully you'll reference it, and I appreciate the opportunity to address you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Cleese. We have Peggy Nye to be followed by Herb Prol. It looks like Prolkings. Ms. Nye, would you also tell us where you live?
I live in Danbury, in the city of Danbury, and I have...
How about it? We're just looking for a street. Oh, well, you can tell me where your office is. That would be.
My office is on Mill Plain Road. We are a regional office for the Danbury area. I have previously sold 2 homes on Indian Spring Road, so I'm very familiar with the area. As a licensed realtor at William Ravis in Danbury in the state of Connecticut since 1996, I am here in support of the neighborhood and oppose the location of a cell tower. One important change in the state of Connecticut that we now have is a new law governing representation of buyers. Under the Consumer Protection Act, buyer brokerage agreements were enacted to ensure the full representation of a buyer's interest in a real estate transaction. This was not the case 10 years ago. Whether representing either a buyer or a seller, we owe our clients certain fiduciary duties, which include reasonable skill and care, translation, reasonable discovery of pertinent facts regarding property or a home in a neighborhood, as well as disclosure, which includes also material facts of a property or a neighborhood. Both of these mean that when a buyer contracts a realtor about a home, the agent must relate to them anything they know about a home, including inside and outside influences that might affect that property value. So when a client calls me and asks about the neighborhood, I'm obligated to tell them what I know. As an example, I may say it's a flat street, it's a cul-de-sac, or there's a double yellow line, it's a busy road, or it's under a power line, next to a railroad track, or in sight of a cell tower. Most buyers will not find some of those characteristics as positive influences on their potential investment. It is impossible to measure the number of buyers who will write off a property sight unseen just on the basis that there is a cell tower there or overhead wires. While some are not bothered by external influences, there are more that will not take the chance. This area is very much a relocation destination for many working in Lower Fairfield County as well as Westchester County. Their transferees are held to even stricter standards, as the relocation companies do not want them to buy a home that they can't sell, so they strongly suggest to their transferees and the realtors that they work with that the more the cookie cutter the house, the better. You have probably heard the term home equity white. The more unique a home is, regardless of what makes it different, the longer it takes to sell, which generates into more time, more carrying costs for the seller, and thus less money. I always told my clients if they didn't like what they couldn't be changed about a home, then they should find another home. For instance, if it was location, a yard, a steep driveway, they had better keep looking. Paint and carpet can always be changed, cell towers can't be moved. As quoted in my letter to Mr. Phelps, Cadre Appraisal stated that the external obsolescence would have a negative impact on properties of approximately 10 to 15%, which translates into a minimum of $30,000 to $50,000 for the homes in this area. Per our multiple listing service, our marketplace is already down about 30% in the recent housing crunch. Most homeowners cannot afford another dip into their pocket. I would like to make one last point regarding the appraisal comparisons submitted by Lane appraisers to OptiSite in nearby New York State. While I understand that Lane looked at homes surrounding these other cell tower sites, they used a price per square foot method of comparison, which I'm sure Mr. Kleiss would agree with me, is flawed for a number of reasons. Normally, a price per square foot comparison when looking at a property applies to a tract house, which you're comparing four bedroom, 2.5 bath colonials, 2,400 square feet, 2-car garage. They all look the same. They all are the same. It's wonderful pricing comparison when used for new construction. However, when in their study, they compared houses from 1789 to 1998 to 1974 and all related them to their proximity to a cell tower and said that their price per square footage did not drop. Well, they can't begin to compare a home that way. They did this study in Pound Ridge, New York, and in Suffern Village, and there's a number of studies that were in that information that was given to me this afternoon from OptiSite. If an agent in my office came to me and was doing a market analysis on a home on a price per square footage basis, and they were comparing a raised ranch to a colonial, to a ranch, and to an antique, I would send them back to training. In conclusion, the market has changed. The market also that they used there in their comparison study was from the years 2003 to 2006, which of course saw increases in prices and in values, and we are now gone the other way, and that market is not coming back anytime soon. I thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Herb Pralkins, to be followed by Robert E. Richards. Be good to have out Robert E. Richards.
That's me. I didn't sign up to speak.
Well, somebody signed you up. You're not just going to be shy now, are you? That's all right. You agree with that which has been said, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Then we're going to move to Ruth Snodgrass.
Was that on the signature of the earlier meeting?
Well, yes, it is.
That was the attendance of the earlier meeting.
Oh, okay, great.
To sign up to make a speech here.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad you're here, though. Robert E. Richards to be followed, I just said Robert. Ruth Snodgrass to be followed by Linda Nasser.
Hello, my name is Ruth Snodgrass. I live at 10 Indian Spring Road. I've been fortunate enough to live in a residential area of Danbury for over 40 years. The Stadley Rough Great Plain area has a healthy environment and is a great place for families to live and grow in. There are many homes in our area, old and new. Some of the oldest homes and structures on Stadley and Great Plain Road date back to the 17 and 1800s and could qualify for the National Register of Historic Places. The old Great Plain School, the chapel, and Great Plain Cemetery are a few examples. Unfortunately, our area has been targeted by OptiSite Towers, who wants to construct a 140-foot cell tower communication facility at 52 Stadley Rough Road. Within a 100 by 100 foot leased area, trees and plant life will be cleared away and destroyed. There will be a proposed gravel driveway with parking and a turnaround area attached to the compound. Will this area also be cleared out? How much clearing would be done, and what happens to the wetlands that are only 6 feet away? Will the wetlands survive or perish? Overhead power telephone lines from an existing utility pole on Stadley Rough Road would run diagonally across the road to a new proposed utility pole near the church. A 140-foot cell tower will cast a blight on the Stadley Rough Great Plain area and become an eyesore. The value of our homes will drop dramatically. A 100-foot cell tower will impact our environment and change the topography and character of the Stadley Rough Great Plain landscape forever. Cell towers do not belong in residential areas. Thank you.
Thank you. At this, I believe that concludes the testimony from the core group. It appears that we also have 40 additional people signed up to speak, and as I indicated before, I would like to hear from everyone. So as is our custom, that we are going to be, we do have a 3-minute clock, and we're going to try and hold everyone to that, because otherwise we won't be able to hear everyone, and I'm sure nobody wants to travel to New Britain. So, not just to go to our offices, it's less inconvenient than remaining here. So, we're going to start our three-minute clock. We're going to call upon Linda Nasser first, to be followed by Sadie Virtudes.
Now, I just agree. That sign-up sheet, we were told we had to sign because we weren't at the meeting here.
Oh, okay.
A lot of people did that. So
A lot of
that's why
people?
we had so many
Okay, well, that's fine. You know, then maybe we'll get some more people. Well, you make me feel better. Thank you. Ms. Nasser, could you just tell us where you live? And also, could you do, Gail needs this favor. Everybody who comes up, if you wouldn't mind spelling your last name.
Sure.
So, because otherwise she's never going to figure out who spoke, and neither will you when you read the transcript.
Okay.
Thanks.
My name is Linda Nasser. It's Ann as in Nancy, A-S-S-E-R. And I live at 40 Corntassel Road in Danbury. I am against the cell tower that is proposed for 52 Stadley Rough Road. Its presence would decrease the property value of my home and that of the other homes in our neighborhood. Cell towers do not belong in residential areas so very close to existing homes, and this has been a residential neighborhood for many years. I am a native Danburian, and 50 years ago, although I don't like to be telling you my approximate age, my school bus would come up to this area to pick up the kids from the Stadley rough area. It was a rural area consisting of rolling hills and meadows and some small farms. I have also read historical accounts from our Danbury newspaper, which have recounted incidences 75 and 100 years ago when the locals would come to this very rural area to collect hickory nuts from the towering trees. Therefore, I feel uniquely and we're in a unique position to tell you with this, my 50 years of experience, that this has always been a very quiet residential part of town. When I decided to live in this area, going back 30 years, I certainly never dreamed that I would have to stand before a siting council to defend my choice of residential neighborhoods. The area still maintains its natural beauty of green grass, flowers, trees, and stone walls. And the tree canopy is the tallest thing we have around here. And so a towering metal tower, much taller than the buildings around it, would be totally out of place in the Stadley rough area. Furthermore, more than 2.4 acres of designated open space lie behind my home on Corntassel Road. This open space, as well as my property, by my calculations, are less than 200 yards away from the church property, where the proposed tower would be. Neither residential homes nor fields and woodlands of open space should be so close to a cell tower, which would reduce the quality and value of the open space as well as our residential properties. I urge you not to allow this tower to be placed at 52 Stadley Rough Road. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nasser. We have Peggy Assini to be followed by Peggy Billings. You're just, we're taking attendance later. Okay, thank you very much. How about Marianne Stratzner? Ms. Stratner, if you also wouldn't mind spelling your name and telling us where you live.
No problem.
Thanks.
My name is Mary Ann Stratner. That's Stratner. I live at 1 Hawley Road in Danbury, Connecticut. I'm actually next door neighbor to Linda Nasser. As a Danbury resident and a mother of a 3-year-old, I live within 1,000 feet from the proposed site, and I am against this cell tower proposal for a residential area like ours. This is not a highway, right-of-way, or a commercial area. Residents will be exposed to potentially negative impacts of these cellular antennas 24 hours per day, 7 days a week. I'd like to note that in the consideration of other potential sites in the area for the proposed facility, Danbury city officials decided that they would not lease space for tower facilities on any city school property. In addition, based on testing data recently collected by the city, there does not appear to be a need for this project. So why is the Connecticut Siting Council even considering this proposal? The city's engineer also documented that existing sites could be used to provide additional coverage. The proposed project does not appear to meet city zoning department requirements, in that the tower and associated structures are only about 10 feet from an adjacent residential property line, whereas the required setback should be the height of the tower plus 25 feet, which is 165 feet. If this does not meet the zoning requirements again, why is the Connecticut Siting Council even considering this proposal? In addition, at least 2 real estate firms both state that the proposed facility would have a significant negative impact on our property values of up to 20%, and that properties, including mine, adjacent to this facility, take much longer and would take much longer to sell. Not surprisingly, the applicant's real estate consultant said that there will be no financial impact. Will the applicant OptiSite reimburse us for the 20% loss and find buyers for our homes? These are just a few of my concerns, and I seriously hope that the Connecticut Siding Council can realize that there are numerous negative impacts and that there is clearly no need for this project in this highly residential area. Thank you for your time and consideration of my concerns.
Thank you very much, Ms. Stradner. Harold N. Noonan, to be followed by Albert Aldrich.
Thank you, gentlemen. My name is Harold Noonan, N-O-O-N-A-N. I live down at number 98 Great Plain Road. For 18 years, I owned one of the oldest houses in that neighborhood at number 100 Great Plain Road. I've lived within a mile of the base of this considered tower since 1953. The neighborhood is old, it's established, and it is properly zoned. It's got its housing, it's got its old farms, it's got its new houses. This tower does not belong in the neighborhood. I do a lot of photography work since I retired from the fire department, and Sunday morning we're sitting at the yacht club up in Brookfield having breakfast. I looked across that placid lake towards New Fairfield, and there sits one of the abominations that some idiot decided to try to disguise as a pine tree, probably 140, 150 feet high above all the deciduous trees. This thing doesn't belong there. It belongs in a commercial neighborhood. I doubt very much that OptiSite has even bothered looking at any of the properties that are considered commercial as a state highway garage. Down on Route 7, there's a city water tower up by Sterling Woods. They can mount their equipment up there, but we do not need it in that neighborhood. And I also worry very much about the value of the properties that I have up there. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Noonan. Albert Yeldrich, to be followed by Pastor Richard DeMuso. DeMoss. Okay, thank you very much. Well, if Albert isn't ready, Pastor, did you want to speak, or were you just forced to sign in also?
Yes, I am here. My name is Richard DeMoss. I'm the pastor of the Colonial Hills Baptist Church and administrator of the Colonial Hills Christian Academy right next door. And redundancy is pretty much impossible in a meeting like this. It's going to continue. Of course, property values will be affected. That's a fact. Everyone knows that. In our case, we have spent a lot of money and time to beautify our property, make it look nice. Much has been said about the canopy and how that the tower will rise above the canopy. Let's not forget they are deciduous trees. Most of the time there is no canopy. It will be seen most of the year. And while a balloon shows the height, all that you see is an invisible line holding a small balloon. This will be a huge intrusive tower right next to where our school and church are. And as I have parents pulling in the parking lot all of the time, and our church members pulling in the parking lot all the time, it will be smack dab in front of them at every turn. And just a reminder that the church is no longer in a pristine neighborhood. Stadley Rough area is a beautiful neighborhood, and we've worked hard to make sure that our church property is in line with all of that. And we would hate to see the cell tower go up there and ruin it for the neighbors and for our church and for our school. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pastor. Councilman Robert Arconti?
Yes.
To be followed by Michael Sibbett. Councilman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the council. All of my talking points were already mentioned by all the folks here, but I do want you to know that I spoke to my constituents. And there were no mixed feelings about this. Everyone was against this, thinking that, you know, in my short time at a common council, I've always gotten mixed feelings on different issues we've had within the city. This is definitely not one of them. Everyone is strongly against it. I appreciate your consideration for all the good work by the folks here from the core group, and please take all that into consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Michael Civic, to be followed by I am going to say Emmanuel. Is there? I hope there's only one Emmanuel here. Or I'm completely blunt. We're never going to figure out who signed up. Would it be Bernard? Well, we'll try. Mr. Civic.
Hello, my name is Michael Civic. I live at 56 Great Plain Road in Danbury. I'm a member of Colonial Hills Baptist Church. I think everything's been said. I appreciate what the core group did. They went above and beyond what they probably needed to do, but it was appreciated. My question to your group is, I work in White Plains, New York, and I travel 684 daily, and every day there's a new cell tower goes up on the highway. Why can't Connecticut put their cell towers on the highway?
Thank you. Of course, this is Connecticut and not New York. Something for which many of us are grateful. Manual, and there's a manual. Otherwise, if somebody, I don't call somebody, it's the handwriting. Donna Schoen? Your attendance also, okay. Angela Bayes? Bayes. Oh, Bayer. Okay. We're having trouble with all the handwriting today.
Sorry. I could have been a doctor, right? My name is Angela Bayer. That's B-A-Y-E-R, like the aspirin, wrong side of the family. I'm a registered nurse, a biologist, a mother, and the aesthetic police. While it is kind of this company to beautify the presence of the 140-foot tower by surrounding it with an 8-foot fence, I do not know of any school-aged child, there are at least 3 schools full of boys, within a stone's throw that would not like to scale the fence or even the tower for bragging rights. Planting trees around the fence, while commendable, cannot in any way compensate for the 9 trees being sacrificed. Gravel, though, is a nice touch, but I don't even know if it can absorb the noise of the computers, generators, and air conditioners. Unfortunately, I cannot imagine sipping coffee on my deck on a Sunday and admiring the artificial tree, or whatever it's going to be, covering this project, I'll call it. Because my commentary is restricted to the aesthetics, I won't mention that the Telecom Act of 1996 allows the zoning boards to authorize erection of mobile cell towers and base stations and antennas without having to consider the health effects. That's the nurse on me. Neither will I mention that I agree with the Radiation Protection Division of the EPA that says that guidelines specific to non-thermal radiation must be established separately from thermal radiation. That's a biologist in me. I won't talk about the hundreds of studies completed worldwide over the past 12 years that have shown that non-thermal radiation is really not safe for DNA replication. It affects the blood-brain barrier, it affects your sleep, it changes communications between cells, and it changes your brain waves. And I will ignore the fact that our children are most at risk for low-level non-thermal radiation, as it is easily absorbed into their developing bodies. I know that our schools and countless families will be adversely affected by the construction of this base station. Apart from being unsightly real estate nightmares, the base stations are a direct danger to our quality of life. I will say that my house value has already dropped due to the unrecession, and with the base station installation, I will probably not recoup the value during my lifetime. I'll have to live there after I die. Thank you.
Gary Krapusik, to be followed by Ted and Andrea Greger. Okay. I take it nobody's moving over there. Kathy Twombly, to be followed by Karen and Bill Talent.
I'm
Ms.
Kathy.
Twombly?
Thank you. Twombly. I live at 12 Indian Spring Road. I took off time today from my business in Danbury to go home to see just where this balloon was to float. As I drove into the end of my driveway, I stopped, and behold, above my garage, there floats the balloon. To be honest with you, I really didn't think too much about it until today. And I realized, as other people have pointed out, I like to sit out on my deck. I enjoy my backyard. It's my consolation. I don't care to look at a cell tower that is made of metal or plastic or anything else, aside from the environmental issues. I think that this does not need to be. I don't feel that it should be, and I don't think it has to be. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Karen and Bill Talent, to be followed by Frank Sherko. You're just signed in too. Thank you very much. Joe Molinaro, about, oh, okay, thanks. Elaine Morse, Victoria Orlovsky, Heather Krieger. Oh, you're here. Would you care, did you want to say anything to us? Yes. Okay. That's right. That's right. A lot of, you have to get through a lot of people to get here today.
Good evening, my name is Heather Cray, spelled C as in cat, R-E-A-G-H. I'm a resident of Brookfield, 33 North Pleasant Rise. However, I and my family have been members of the Colonial Hills Baptist Church for over 11 years. I am speaking tonight against the cell tower proposal. I own a cell phone and I use it regularly. However, I have never complained to my cell phone carrier that I don't have enough bars everywhere I go. People these days may believe that a church is a place you go to on Sunday mornings for a few hours, and then the building stands empty for the rest of the week. That is not the case with Colonial Hills. We are a church family, and our building is our second home. For many of us, we are at church as much as we are at our homes. Our building is in use 5, 6, 7 days a week. Besides worship services, youth activities, we have a Christian school, which is in operation 5 days a week. The children who attend school use the front and backyard areas to play in at recess and lunchtime. The back section of our parking lot is blocked off and used for gym classes. Some couples choose to have their wedding receptions in tents on our front lawns, and we enjoy our summer picnics as a church family. This cell tower would be a dominating presence at all of these functions. The proposed cell tower is placed right at our property line with Christ the Shepherd Church. It would stick out like a giant sore thumb at all of our activities. A few years ago, about 5 years ago now, the Colonial Hills Baptist Church spent $300,000 upgrading our property to the City of Danbury's codes and specifications. We expanded and improved the parking lot and added a beautiful sidewalk with trees and shrubs. The setting now reminds me of a college campus. We were as interested in improving the aesthetics as the city, and we dutifully followed their specifications. The $300,000 was not taxpayer money. It was out of our congregation's tithes and offerings. We could have used this for the ongoing ministries of our church. Many people of our congregation gave up countless hours of their personal time
to do the work required and to help save money where possible. I remember the rainy spring we had just before the June deadline imposed by the city of Danbury to finish the outside work. Many of the people here tonight from Colonial Hills worked in the rain and in the mud outside that spring to complete the work on the parking lot. I am telling you this so that you will realize that we have a lot of physical and emotional blood, sweat, and tears in our property. What are we to think now if the council improves this cell tower? That zoning and building codes are meaningless, or that the rules are applied in an arbitrary manner? It will be a hurtful act of betrayal and a breach of trust with the city of Danbury if you now allow this cell tower. It will decrease our property value and ruin the appearance of our property and the surrounding neighborhood. I'll close with, cell towers are ugly no matter what you do or don't do to disguise them. I passed a cell tower on the Hutchinson River Parkway in New York. They tried to hide its ugliness by dressing it up with fake branches and leaf-like structures. That has only made it more grotesque. It is a pitiful, laughable sight. At least on a highway median, commuters only have to look at it a split second as they whiz by in their cars. But you know, it is the first thing that draws my attention when I'm either driving my car past it or a passenger in the car. I don't want this cell tower to ruin the enjoyment of our property and our neighborhood. Quality of life is more important than gaps in coverage. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Barry Blaine, to be followed by Gregory Winnick. Mr. Blaine, could you just remember to spell your name and tell us where you live, please?
My name is Barry Blaine, B-L-A-I-N. I live at 18 Indian Spring Road. I actually came tonight and I signed in, but since I signed in, I'll go ahead and speak. I've lived at Indian Spring Road for 20 years. It's a residential area. One of the things that no one's mentioned tonight, or that I haven't heard mentioned, is, and one of the things that made me buy on Indian Spring Road are the buried utilities. The utilities are buried so that we don't have any overhead lines. We don't have the unsightly view of telephone poles running down the street. What's proposed here is the ultimate telephone pole, the ultimate unsightly and frankly, I think, unneeded distortion of the entire community, of the entire neighborhood. The fact that it's being proposed into a neighborhood where I would say it's probably 2 miles from any industrial or commercial development is puzzling to me, other than the fact that I would assume that it's because of the low-hanging fruit that the mayor spoke about. Easy because somebody in a moment of weakness agreed to this structure in a neighborhood. That's why I'm speaking out against this tower. One thing that I would ask the commission to consider in the future on this is that if the future technological changes come about where this tower, if it were to be built, is no longer needed, would a bond be required for the decommissioning and deconstruction of this facility if it's built and no longer needed 10 or 15 years from now? Or will it sit and ultimately be abandoned by whoever owns it at that time? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blaine. Gary Winnick, to be followed by Mark Hornius. Mr. Winnick?
Greetings, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Gregory Wensek, W-E-N-C-E-K. I live at 9 Silkham Drive. I believe I'm in line of sight of the tower, although I won't guarantee that because I didn't see the balloon test, so I'm not sure. And I also anecdotally will say that I always get service. We have both T-Mobile and Verizon, data plans and voice plans, and there is no gap in coverage in any of the areas I've been in and around my house and neighborhood. I also say that my livelihood is partially dependent on cell phone use. If cell phones don't work, my boss won't hire me to continue to keep working. So I like cell phones, and I really, really want them to work really, really well. But that being said, I'm against this tower. It's in the wrong place. But if it has to be built, I would hope that the transmitter shack be required to conform to the neighborhood guidelines. All the architecture as the neighborhood is this structure. I understand the proposal is not calling for that now, but it should. This building should look just like everything else in the neighborhood. If the tower goes up, it should be camouflaged to the best of the ability to camouflage a tower. And all light pollution should be reduced to the greatest extent possible from this site. I'm sure there are security concerns that this facility will need to be lit, and during the evening, it's very nice outside. There are very few street lights, and it would be very nice if we didn't have, other than the red light, the FAA lights on the tower itself, we didn't have other light pollution emitting from this site. And I'd like you to take that into consideration as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mark Carnias, to be followed by Michael Calandrino.
Good evening, council members. My name is Mark Kornhaas, Kornhaas. I live at 14 Royal Road, and that's right below the site that we're talking about. I've resided at this address since 1982. Like a lot of people before me that gave testimony, this is a pristine neighborhood. It's one of the reasons I bought there. Comment number one, this tower is definitely out of place. It does not belong in an established residential neighborhood. It's wrong. Secondly, it will definitely affect the property values. The first impression when you come into that neighborhood to see a cell tower is just going to deter buyers, and it's definitely going to devaluate the property. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Michael Calandrino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll defer to the next speaker, as most of what I had to say is covered by Mayor Batten, Joe Cattle, and Becky Nye.
Okay, so just because we have to pick it up on the microphone, so Mr. Calandrino, you're saying you're going to defer to Mr. O'Callahan, who's our next speaker, and most of what you would have said was been covered by will be covered by him and has been covered by Mayor Batten.
Already covered by Mayor Batten,
Right.
Joe Cattle, and Becky
Great.
Nye.
Thank you very much. Gerald O'Callahan, to be followed by Maureen Febush.
Hello, Jesus.
Oh,
Jesus is the
all right.
Lord. How you doing? I'm from 136 Pembroke Road, Danbury, Connecticut. I'm also one of the parties against the Marjorie Reservoir Tower, which is not part of this proceeding per se, but many of the arguments that are made on the cell towers are the same as what I've looked over in the application that I received from the state. And I just want to say that, of course, I'm with all these people for the same exact reasons. You know, the idea that the tower is inobtrusive, and the words they used in the application that I reviewed was diminished effect. Well, if a 17-foot a tall person was standing here, I don't think you would say it would be inobtrusive. And one thing people don't mention is that with the cell towers, and if you've ever seen one of these things, when you have the antennas on them, they're not the pole that they show in the graphics. With the antennas, they look like a monstrosity. Many of them are slated to have 5, 6, or 7 or 8 antennas. The other thing I'd just like to bring up quickly is that the prohibitions that no one can challenge the state, you know, in other words, the federal government saying that no one can challenge these things can be challenged on constitutional reasons, because the federal government does not have the powers that are not delegated to them in the Constitution. They don't have the power to start telling the states and localities what to do. So that's a challenge that I'd like to have down on the record. Number 2, on the state statutes, health is an issue, and it's mentioned under environmental impact of the literature that you folks have given me. So when people bring up health issues and you know the directions that you folks give, say don't bring up health. Well, these certainly is something that we should be bringing up. And that's the duty of the state to consider those issues. In fact, in the application that I got, the cell tower company has a whole category on this saying how it's proving that it's not unhealthy. So obviously it is an issue to be contended with. And lastly, I would just like to say that the cell tower companies, if you look at them, if you have it their way, this is like the Bible says, for the love of money is the root of all evil. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry that if they have their way, they'll have a cell tower every 2 miles, square miles across the United States, except in those prohibited, like parks and everything, which, you know, why would they prohibit that if they're not going to prohibit it right from down our street? But this is what they have in mind. So, you know, it's certainly something to consider that, you know, it's just an endless road unless you stop these things. Everyone has a right to stop these towers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maureen Phoebish, to be followed, to be followed by State Representative Tabersack. Maureen, is that you? Okay, great, thank you. You don't know this, but they have these spotlights blinding us, so we can't necessarily see who's walking up. Thanks. Would you just spell your last name and tell us where you live, please?
Everton Frank, E.I. My name is Maureen Phoebish. That's F as in Frank, E.I. B as in boy, U, S as in Sam, C-H. I live at 3 Hawthorne Cove Road in Danbury, Connecticut. Well, the tower would not be in sight from my house at all. For 13 years, I had children at Stadley Rupp Elementary School, so I'm very familiar with the area. We also are parishioners at St. Gregory's Church. Having been in the area for 22 years, I would like to say that I do not see any way a 140-foot tower can possibly be anything but an aesthetic nightmare. And I don't see how some negligible improvement in self-service can justify that.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Phoebish. State Representative Tabersack, to be followed by Teresa DeAndrade.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and distinguished members. My name is Joe Tabersack. I am the state representative for the 109th District. I'm opposed to the approval of the current application and cite before you. I say this while believing that we live in a society that needs cell towers, but knowing that we can accomplish the underlying public policy of the Telecommunications Act without unnecessarily destroying scenic views and devaluing our residents' homes in our community. I have serious concerns about the impact this tower in its current location will have on the values of nearby homes. As a lawyer that handles a fair share of real estate transactions, I've seen firsthand the significant negative impact these structures have on nearby properties. This is not conjecture or theory, it's a sure thing. And it is an impact that is long lasting, I can assure you of that. I'm also quite concerned by the impact this proposed 140-foot tower would have on the view shed or scenic values in the area, while towering over the 65-foot tree canopy, as it is estimated. The word drastic comes to mind because it would be a drastic structure and a drastic eyesore in the proposed location. Given today's technology, surely there can be and should be a better design before you right now. Not having a great deal of time to review the recent discovery and other filings by the applicant, I have read enough to question whether this application is thorough, complete, and based upon a fair process. On the issue of fair process and due process, If you look at the record, it is apparent to me that what happened here over the several years that this application has transpired, that 2 different facilities have been proposed under what I would argue is one official application. I ask you, is this proper? And I know that you will look into that. Have all of the procedural requirements of Chapter 277A been met? Has the city been shortchanged, or the people of Danbury, in any way procedurally? I have my doubts this application is procedurally proper. I also question the completeness of this application and the completeness of the discovery responses made by the applicant and the applicant's efforts to explore and consider alternative sites. I finally ask you to use your wise judgment, expertise, and exercise the discretion you have under law to disbelieve any evidence presented to you by the applicants in whole or in part, and to similarly disregard any materials provided to you by the applicant in whole or in part as you feel justice requires. You can use this discretion, as I know you frequently do, as I've read in your decisions, and still provide a fundamentally fair hearing. This is the observation and ruling of Dorr versus the Commissioner of Motor Vehicles, 62 Con App 604. It's an appellate court decision in our state. I appreciate your time and consideration, and I know that you will use that valuable discretion you have and are given by law to come to the same conclusion I have reached, and that is this application should be rejected as it is filed. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Taversack. Let's see, Teresa DeAndrade, to be followed. Okay, thank you. How about John Yamazo? Where's he's coming? Okay, great, thank you very much. And would you spell that for me,
Sure.
just in case I pronounced it incorrectly?
Actually, did a very good job, thank you. I-O-M-M-A-Z-Z-O, 27 Corntassel Road. Good evening, everybody. I appreciate your time. I have to say I'm neighbors to most of these folks immediately, although I'm not part of the core group, but I am a concerned neighbor. I moved to the neighborhood relatively short time ago. I only lived there 3 years, but I moved from another part of the city that unfortunately has another blight on the city, transfer station. And I moved to this part of the city for the exact reason most of all these other people did, for the beauty and the peace and the quiet. And I'd hate for that to change. And I hope you folks take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have next Cindy Latimer and Michael Latimer, who are also just here for attendance. Okay, great, thanks. We have City Councilman Dwayne Perkins, to be followed by Soren. I'm going to work on it before I call on you again. Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I also would like to thank the public for coming out in such strong numbers. I am not an eyeshot of the tower. Speaking as a city councilman, I'm mostly concerned about neighborhoods and some of the zoning regulation. I do believe the tower is in the wrong place. It really shouldn't be in a residential area. I also am concerned about the impact on the property values, not just the values, but it alters the landscape, a landscape that many of those residents in the area have come to love so well. I believe that there's better locations for this tower, and I would urge the committee to look into those different locations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Perkins. Mr. Anguranev. How's that?
Good evening, how you doing?
Good,
I don't quite live in the exact line of sight, but my
Just do
concern...
me a favor, I'm going to need you to spell though for
Oh, okay.
just spell your last name and tell me
Okay.
where you, give me your address, please.
Okay, I'm at Great Plain Road. Okay, and anyways.
Can you spell it?
Oh, Ungureanu.
Pronounce it for me so I won't forget it.
Ungurano.
Ungurano.
See?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. My concern's a little bit different. Actually, it's coming from a completely different angle. I drive to work quite the distance, and about 2 years ago, I was actually driven off the road. So 65, 70 miles an hour on a rough patch of grass. Luckily, there was no bridge or whatever. But the bottom line is, when I got back on the road, and I went after the person to see what the heck drove them to get me off the road, they were actually still talking on their cell phone. Yeah, she didn't even see what she did. And basically, you know, this is a residential area. The roads are windier than the highway. And really, the bottom line is people don't really need that much coverage over there. I mean, let's be honest. Everyone over there has got a home. They have phones. You know, they can use them if they need them. You know, that's really the bottom line. It's not only going to affect our quality of life, it's going to affect our life too. Kids are the ones that are being targeted in these commercials, if you ever look at them. You know, they're the ones with like 3 or 4 cell phones, and while that's fine while they're in school, they also have access to a phone in school. But now we're going to have teenagers on the road talking on their cell phones, not on straightaways, but on curvy roads. And that is an endangerment to our life, not just our property values, because if you're dead, you're not really going to care about your property values. And that's really, it's been my concern because it affected me personally, you know. And like I said, when something like that happens to you, you think of it from a little bit different angle. And thank you very much for your time. Take care.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Ungurano. Mr. Phelps.
Mr. Chairman, we have no other persons who signed up to speak yet this evening.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak who's not signed up and wishes to do so? And sir, if you would also, again, tell us who you are and where you live, please.
My name is Charles Snodgrass. I live at 10 Indian Spring Road, Danbury. My last name is Snodgrass. One thing that has been to my attention, I brought this to Mayor Boughton at the meeting, is if you'd like to stand up, sir, just for a second or two, to drive my point. I could say, this is 140 feet. Where you're standing there is 140 feet. Because they have to fill in the terrain. It's very deep. So that you can't build a cell tower down here. They're going to build it up here. So your 140 feet is going to be this high. Plus, if it gets that high, they're going to have lights. Because we have airplanes coming into Danbury Airport. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it was, yes.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Nina Bassiuni, B-A-S-S-U-N-Y, and I am a very, very new member to Danbury. Me and my little family just bought a house on Indian Spring Road, 13 Indian Spring. I come from Manhattan, so I know a little bit about tall structures. And as we were driving down the street with our realtor, I fell in love with the street, with the neighborhood. There wasn't a power line, there was nothing of New York. There was nothing but this serene, gorgeous fields and trees and houses. And I don't fall in love easily, my husband can attest to that. So I can guarantee you, gentlemen, that I would have never in a million years bought this house if there was this proposed cell tower there. We've put a lot of money into our house. It was a fixer-upper by anybody's definition, and we were happy to do that. But with this proposed cell tower, there's almost a regret for putting all that money and time and energy into something that is going to be not what we signed up for. So please consider that in your decision and know that all of these people take a lot of pride in their neighborhood and in their homes. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Yes.
Good evening. Hi. My name is Patricia Roble. I live on Stadley Rough Road. I am also new to the neighborhood. We just moved there in December. I also want to apologize for being late.
That's right, we took attendance, so everybody signed out. That's what happened.
Sorry.
Yes, and would you mind though spelling your name so that Carol can...
Yep, W-R-O-B-E-L. We just purchased a home also in December, and for 15 years I lived downtown in the city, right off Main Street. And I waited a long time to purchase this house with my husband. And to me, it's the country. It's definitely the country out there. And I look out my picture window and I saw the red balloon this morning right out in front of my house. And it's pretty discouraging to know that a 140-foot tower is going to be there every morning when I look out. I had a nice view of the church across the street and the cross, and now I'm going to have the cell tower, and it's like that young lady just said, had I known, I probably would have reconsidered where I bought my home. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. We have one other person who I'm going to ask to come on down because I can't see. Great, thank you very much. Again, if you tell us, spell your last name, tell us who you are, and tell us where you live.
Rod Edwards, E-D-W-A-R-D-S. I live on 90 Stadley Rough Road. And I just want to echo the statements made by my neighbors about the area. I have a unique perspective in that I married a real estate agent. So, you know, in asking her where would she like to live, we happen to choose Stadley Rough Road. And putting this tower in the area definitely will make things for the worse. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Edwards. Is there anyone else? Very good. Oh, there's somebody.
Yeah, I'd like to take back my spot. Thanks. Teresa Dandrade, 40 Acre Mountain Road, and I am not in line of sight of the tower. And I am, I think, very representative of the findings of a lot of these people here. I feel like I must be the only one here that does not have cell phone service. I run my business out of my house, and I do not have cell phone service. I have had, I think, every provider available, and none of them provide service at my house. That has not made me move my business or my house. I live with that. In fact, I almost like it. I like the remoteness of where I live and of the area. And it does not affect my ability to conduct business because I have a phone at home. And I do not expect cell phone service every 100 meters that while I'm driving, it's okay to wait until you find another spot. So I came here not quite sure how I felt about it. And hearing what I've heard, I think that there really is not a great need. It doesn't seem like it's going to have a great effect, an overall effect on the additional coverage that they're looking for with this. Thank you.
Thank you. But before you get to tell, you too have to tell us and tell us who you are, spell your last name, because you thought I was going to cut you off, so you started right onto your speech.
Nope, I
So
want to be
tell us who you
sensitive.
are and where you live, just so
Just being
Gail
sensitive of
gets that.
everyone's time. Teresa Dandrade, D''Andrade, 40 Acre Mountain Road.
Great,
Thanks.
thank you very much. Is there one other person? Come on down.
My name is Dr. Mike Gerstenfeld, Gerstenfeld. I live on 4 Kendall Terrace, and I'd just like to have make a comment this evening. Mr. Chairman, the application for the cell phone tower should be denied. I think this evening the substantial evidence standard has been met. The aesthetic objections have been already spoken to. The adverse impact on property values has already been documented. And most importantly, the proximity to the school. I think the children have a right to be able to look out in peace, and that the aesthetic impact could last for years. I think if you ask most children or most adults what their memory of when they were in school as a child wouldn't include a view of a cell phone tower. So I again request that the council should reject this application, and thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone further? Anyone else who hasn't signed up who wishes to speak? See no one else. I want to thank you all for giving us the opportunity to listen to you, and so many of you. We do take these comments very seriously, as we do with everything in these procedures, for which we travel throughout the state and deal with many different communities, many different neighborhoods. And that's why we're here, and that's why we listen. At this point, I am going to close this public hearing. The council will be hearing from the applicant, from the party, City of Danbury, and a continuation of our hearing, which began at 3 o'clock this afternoon, at a date and time to be determined, and it will be held in New Britain. But I want to thank you all, and thank you certainly for the cooperation which you've given to each of, and the courtesy you've given to us and to each of you, so that we could bring this to a conclusion and hear all of you. Mr. Phelps, is there anything else on the docket today?
There being no further business, sir, we will communicate the date when the continuation date is set. We'll make sure that that is communicated to the city and posted prominently on our website. I would ask concerned persons to monitor the website that we have on our homepage. We have a pending proceedings page, and a new hearing notice will be posted on that page, and it will be marked with the hyperlink that says continuation hearing, evidentiary hearing. And as the chairman indicated, that'll be New Britain. Thank you, Chairman.
And again, I'd like to thank Mayor Boughton for his hospitality and hard work in all these matters. There now be further business coming before us. Anyone else in the council have anything? If not, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you all very much. Drive home safe.